The 32-year-old Nick Reiner has been charged with them. He's being held on $4 million bail, but his struggles with addiction and mental health. In Hollywood, stories usually end when the cameras stop rolling. But for Rob Reiner, the most upsetting chapter happened far away from any movie set. Long before his death, Rob talked openly about his challenges as a dad, his regrets, and the hard truth of watching his son fight addiction. Those words now feel even heavier, because what Rob shared about Nick Reiner wasn't just gossip or drama. It was the real, honest truth that few people wanted to face until it was too late, a family tragedy that nobody expected. When the news came out that Rob Reiner had died, along with his wife Michelle, it was first seen as a quiet, sad loss. There weren't big, dramatic headlines right away, no quick judgments. Officials confirmed their deaths and said the situation was unusual, but they gave few details. To everyone outside, it seemed like a private sadness for a private family, the kind of thing that would fade without much public notice. That idea didn't last long. As detectives started looking at the scene, it became obvious that Rob and Michelle's deaths wouldn't be easy to explain. What seemed unclear at first soon raised serious worries that needed more investigation. The words officials used changed a little, but in a clear way. What they had called unclear was now called suspicious. And with that change came a tough truth. This wasn't just a death anymore. It was possibly a crime. The biggest shock came when Rob Reiner's son was named as a suspect. That news changed the whole story. This wasn't a threat from outside or some random act of violence. It was between a father, a mother, and their son, a relationship most people naturally link to protection, loyalty, and trust. That connection made the suspicion almost too hard to belay. Eve. For many, just the thought of it was more upsetting than any details detectives could share. What made it even tougher to understand was that there were no clear warning signs in public. There had been no obvious family fights, no well-known arguments, no public records of violence that pointed to things getting worse. From the outside, the family seemed normal. That normal look became one of the most troubling parts of the case. It hinted that whatever went wrong didn't happen out in the open. It happened quietly, behind closed doors that no one else could see. As the investigation went on, everyday parts of family life were looked at again. Normal routines, old talks, and times of quiet were no longer just ordinary. They were possible hints. Conversations that were once forgotten now mattered. Gaps in what happened took on new importance. Detectives weren't only trying to figure out how Rob and Michelle Reiner died, they were trying to understand the relationship that came before it. The emotional mess of the case soon became impossible to overlook. People were dead. A son was suspected. Sadness and doubt were there at the same time, pulling in different ways. There was no simple way to separate grieving from worry or love from doubt. Each feeling mixed together in an uncomfortable way, making everyone involved face questions with no simple answers. People's reactions showed that unease. Some completely refused to believe it, saying there must be a mistake. Others focused on the chance that years of hidden tension had gone unnoticed. The case showed a hard truth that many people try to avoid. Family bonds can break quietly, without any big show, until the harm can't be fixed. As more details slowly came out, the attention moved from the moment of death to the years before it. Detectives weren't only piecing together a crime, they were piecing together a history. What stresses were there inside the home? What fights were never settled? What warning signs, if any, were missed? The deaths of Rob and Michelle Reiner didn't just end lives, they broke old ideas. They made people rethink how well anyone really knows what goes on inside a family. And as the investigation went on, one thing became clearer. This wasn't a story that started with one act of violence. It was the end result of something much longer, much quieter, and way harder to deal with. Years before the tragedy put the family in the spotlight, their private fights had already become a story about surviving. Being Charlie wasn't just a movie. When Being Charlie came out, it was presented as a small, personal drama about addiction and getting better. On the surface, it followed a common path. A troubled young guy, worried parents, and the long journey to recovery. But from the start, people close to the project knew the movie wasn't just based on real life. It was taken straight from it. The story mirrored things that had happened in the Reiner home. shaped by years of fights, fear, and desperate tries to help a son who was slipping away. The movie's half-real nature was never kept secret. Rob talked openly about how much of the heart of it came from watching his kids struggle. Nick, on the other hand, wrote from living through it. This wasn't someone on the outside describing addiction. It was someone who had gone through it, fought it, and made it out. That double view gave the movie a special kind of tension. It was both a parent's story and a kid's response. Every scene held the weight of real fights, real mix-ups, and real hurt that hadn't been fully fixed. Working on the script together mixed things that are usually kept apart. Creative differences turned personal. Personal memories turned into lines in the movie. The work forced dad and son to go back to moments that had almost broken them. Rob later called working together healing, but also tiring. Writing as a team meant bringing up old hurts that were just starting to heal. There was no safe space. Each new version brought feelings that went beyond the words. What made it even harder was the difference in power. Rob was a well-known director with years of experience. Nick was still finding his voice as a writer and as someone getting better. Even with good goals, that difference affected how they worked together. Choices about the story, the feel, and the ending reflected bigger issues about control and trust that had been there for years. The movie became like a mirror, showing not just addiction, but the stress it puts on families who think they're helping. Michelle's part in the story added more depth. She was very involved in helping Nick through his hard times and cared a lot about the movie. Years later, she said that in trying to save their son, they might have not paid attention to what he really needed. Her words that they should have listened to our son hit hard but quietly. It hinted that even love, when mixed with fear, can block things. That comment looked back at the movie differently. What once felt like a story of getting better, now seemed like a record of tension that wasn't solved. The parents in the movie think rules and authority will solve it all. The son feels ignored and not understood. Nobody is completely wrong, but nobody is totally right either. That uneven feel is what makes the story feel real and uneasy. It doesn't give easy answers because real life hardly ever does. For a while, being Charlie was seen as proof that the Reiners had turned a hard time into something good. Talks focused on making up and growing, but under that was a quieter truth. The movie didn't end the family's fights. It recorded them. And as things happened years later, that record started to feel less like healing and more like a warning. One that was right there, but not fully seen. But what the movie didn't show was the part nobody wanted to face. Addiction, distance, and signs that were missed. Nick Reiner's fight with addiction was never hidden from everyone. Long before the tragedy, his parents talked about it openly. They described it as a hard truth they were learning to handle as it happened. Nick went in and out of treatment places, had ups and downs, and sometimes had no steady home. These weren't just ideas. They were real things that changed the family's everyday life and led to tough choices with long effects. For Rob and Michelle, love mixed with fear. Every slip back, every problem made them think help was needed, even if it hurt trust. They depended a lot on experts who offered rules, limits, and knowledge. Doctors, therapists, and program leaders became trusted voices, often more than what Nick said himself. When experts said resistance was just tricking or denying, Rob and Michelle trusted them. They wanted to trust them. Believing experts seemed the safest way to save their son, but that trust had a price. Nick kept saying that some programs weren't helping him. He talked about feeling not heard, not understood, and stuck with labels that didn't fit him. Those worries were often seen as signs of addiction instead of hints of bigger pain. Over time, that ignoring built emotional space. Talks changed from back and forth to directions. Love, once natural, became more like steps to follow. In the family, control and caring started to mix. Rules were made out of worry. Limits were set out of need. Yet from Nick's side, those things could feel like pushing away. When love comes through rules instead of listening, it can accidentally make someone feel more alone. The more his parents tried to keep him safe, the more alone he seemed to feel. This kind of tension is common in families dealing with addiction. But knowing that doesn't make it easier to go through. Rob later admitted this issue with real honesty. He said they sometimes listened to experts when they should have listened to their son. That comment showed how good plans can easily cover up the voices they're trying to help. Addiction makes trust hard for everyone. Parents worry about lies. Kids worry about being controlled. Somewhere in there, understanding gets lost. Distance didn't mean no love. In fact, it often meant the opposite. Rob and Michelle were very involved, always trying to fix what seemed broken. But always stepping in can accidentally say that someone can't be fixed. For Nick, that feeling might have stayed even in better times. Getting better is delicate, and feeling not understood can upset it as much as slipping back. What makes this story extra sad is how clear the missed signs look now. Moments that seemed okay then now seem important. Words that were ignored now carry more meaning. None of this means blame or sure answers. It shows the quiet sadness of families trying their best with little knowledge and a lot of fear. Addiction doesn't go in a straight path. Neither does getting better. In the Reiner family, love never went away, but it got tangled with control in ways hard to untangle. And over time, the space from those missed signs set up a break that nobody thought could happen. Even after making up, something stayed unsettled. And it came up years later. The false idea of getting better. After being Charlie, there was a feeling in Hollywood, and with the public, that the Reiner family had gotten through a hard thing. Talks mentioned growth. The movie was seen as a big change, a time when being honest led to understanding and fixing. For many watchers, the story seemed done. The parents had faced their worries. The son had told his truth, and the family seemed to move on together. That idea settled in quietly and stayed. But getting better, especially when it's public, often. And gives a false sense of an end. What people see are picked moments, nice quotes, hopeful thoughts, and framed talks. Those moments are real, but they're not the full picture. Behind them, life goes on with all its unsettled tensions. Getting better doesn't erase memories. It doesn't undo years of fights or quickly rebuild trust. It just opens a door that has to be gone through every day. For Nick, the time after the movie meant something different. While working with his dad was important, it also made him want to stand on his own more. He wanted freedom, not just in creating, but in feelings. Being known for hard times, even in a story to help heal, can feel limiting. He wanted to be seen as more than a sign of getting better, or an example of pushing through. That want created space not from hating, but from protecting himself. From outside, that space could seem like improvement. Freedom is often seen as steady. When someone pulls back from family, it can look strong. But pulling back doesn't always mean things are fixed. Sometimes it just means quiet. And quiet can hide hurt that's not settled as easily as it can show peace. In families with years of hard times, quiet times aren't always peaceful ones. Rob and Michelle seemed to respect Nick's need for space. They talked proudly about his growth and hoped for his future. Yet hope doesn't remove worry. Even when things seem fixed, the fear that shaped them doesn't go away. It stays under nice talks and helpful actions. In public, everything looked okay. In private, the mess stayed. This difference between how it looked and what was real is where the false healing happens. People think that since the worst isn't seen anymore, it doesn't exist. But emotional hurts don't follow storylines. They don't wrap up neatly at the end of a project or public talk. They stay, changing quietly in the back. In the Reiner family, the idea that things were better might have been partly true. Growth was real. Change had happened. But jury, out isn't safety. It doesn't promise protection or understanding. When getting better is shown publicly, it can make pressure to keep looking steady, even when doubt comes back. Saying you're struggling after saying you're better can feel like failing. The toughest truth is that peace isn't always seen, and being seen doesn't mean peace. The family story, once an example of healing through truth, now looks different. It hints that getting better can live with tension that's not fixed, and that going forward doesn't always mean leaving it behind. And in that quiet gap between looks and truth, hurt that's not settled can stay, ready to come back when nobody thinks it will. Then came the night that brought back every old hurt. The party before everything changed. The night before everything changed didn't start with trouble. It started with fun. A Christmas party at Conan O'Brien's house brought together known faces, friends, and co-workers in a place for warmth and laughs. Rob Reiner went with his son Nick, and for a while, nothing seemed wrong. But according to many reports, the evening changed when Rob and Nick got into a big argument. The fight was noticed by several people, though details about what started it aren't clear. What is known is that the argument was obvious enough to get attention. This wasn't a quiet talk in a corner. It stood out in a place meant for fun. People there later described tension between dad and son that felt unsettled when the night was over. There is no sure story of loud voices or physical fight. But the emotional heaviness of the talk was clear. For those there, it was an awkward moment that broke the happy mood. Stories about how Nick acted that night differ, which has made people even more unsure. Some reports say he seemed upset or bothered. Others say he was quiet, far away, or acting in ways that didn't fit the party. The quote. See, stories don't make one clear picture. They show views shaped by worry, memory, and looking back. No official word has called his actions criminal or violent that night. Still, several people there later said they felt uneasy. That feeling matters not because it proves something, but because it shows how the night felt to those there. When thinking back, people often notice unease they couldn't explain then. What felt like tension or strange actions can mean more after a tragedy. This doesn't change facts, but it does change how the night is remembered. One common story says some guests thought about calling for help because they worried about Nick's state, but didn't. That story hasn't been officially checked and no word from the host. What is clear is that at least some people felt something was off. Whether that came from clear actions, emotional tension, or personal thoughts can't be said for sure. After the party, Rob and Nick left on their own. From there, what happened next is for detectives, not guesses. What matters in understanding this time is not adding meaning beyond what's known, but seeing how weak the situation already was. The argument didn't stand alone. It came after years of hard times, making up, space, and hurt not fixed. That background matters. The party has become a key point in the story because it was the last known public time between dad and son. Looking back, it feels full of meaning. But then, it was just a moment that ended without fixing. Nobody there could know what the next hours would bring. Nobody could guess how that unsettled tension would carry on. By morning, the family story wasn't just theirs anymore. A timeline closely checked. In the hours after the Christmas party, the story went from private tension to public case. What officials have stressed from the start is sticking to checked facts. Among the most looked-at parts are video records that show Nick Reiner in certain places in the early morning after his parents were last seen alive. These views from security cameras near a gas station and later near a hotel in Santa Monica have helped detectives set a basic order of events without guessing reasons. According to reports, the video shows Nick walking calmly by himself and not looking upset. He is seen walking across streets, turning, and finally going to a hotel where records show he checked in soon after. These moments matter, not for what they show, but for what they don't. There is no clear fight, no clash, and no sure sign of violence in the video. It just puts him in place and time during an important period. Police have been careful in what they say publicly, only confirming what evidence supports. They have said the video and hotel records exist, but haven't shared full details on how they connect. Officials have also confirmed the deaths happened in the early morning, though exact time and order are still being investigated. Body checks, lab tests, and online evidence all help in ways not seen right away by the public. What police haven't confirmed is just as key. They haven't said a reason publicly. They haven't shared details about the weapon beyond saying it was a knife. They haven't explained exactly what evidence made them focus so fast. This lack of details has led to guesses, but detectives have said holding back is on purpose. Sharing too soon could hurt the case. Even with holding back, police acted quick to arrest Nick. This choice hints that early evidence was strong enough to meet legal needs. While the public doesn't see all of it, police have said the full evidence, not one thing or video, led their choice. In big cases, timelines come from many small matching details, not one big find. Nick was found about 15 miles from the family home when arrested. His arrest happened without trouble in public. From there, the case went to court where facts are. He checked carefully, not guessed. The focus on Nick doesn't mean sure result. It shows the direction of the investigation based on evidence that can be checked in court. What makes this timeline extra strong is how normal it looks on top. Walking, checking into a hotel, moving in a sleeping city. These normal actions, next to an awful crime, feel very troubling. Yet, detectives warn against seeing meaning in normal actions. Timelines show order, not why. But the court case is only one part of this story. Mental health, blame, and care. As the case went on, focus turned to mental health questions. Reports came out that Nick Reiner had been getting mental care and that medicine changes might have been talked about before the deaths. These details, though limited and not fully checked by officials, fast became part of public talk. Mental health, already often misunderstood, was put in the open in a case full of sadness and shock. What experts have stressed is the need for care. Mental health issues don't follow simple cause and result. Conditions are complicated. Signs differ a lot, and how treatment works changes person to person. Experts have warned against thinking any condition alone explains actions, let alone guesses violence. Such ideas not only twist truth, but also add bad views for millions living with mental health issues who never hurt anyone. Talks about medicine have been extra touchy. Changes in treatment are normal and often needed, but they don't change actions right away. Doctors say medicine changes usually take weeks to show effects. Saying quick results makes a careful process too simple. Without checked medical files or official words, guesses fill spaces facts haven't. Blame is another big part of this talk. Seeing mental health fights doesn't take away the need for being responsible. Nor does being responsible erase illness. The court system is made to look at both. Courts check ability, purpose, and evidence in a set way, not from news or public views. Making hard legal questions simple to one reason risks hurting that process. Experts also point out the risk of using mental health as an easy story. When bad things happen, people look for reasons that make sense. Mental illness can seem like a simple answer, even if it's not full or right. This way can accidentally hurt families already in pain and stop others from getting help from fear of wrong views. Care matters because words shape how people see things. Public talks affect how society sees mental health, addiction, and blame. Wrong, quick judgments can build bad ideas and block help. Good talk means seeing unknowns, respecting fair process, and splitting checked facts from guesses. In this case, very little about Nick Reiner's mental state at the time of the alleged crime has been officially checked. What there is are bits, reports, unnamed sources, and expert comments in general. These bits shouldn't be put together into a full picture. Doing that risks swapping truth for easy story. The biggest reminder from experts has been easy. Wait for the evidence. Mental health reasons should come from checks, witness words, and recorded facts, not public guesses. Kindness and care aren't opposites. They go together when talking about things that touch single lives and bigger views. Behind the news, another family was quietly falling apart. What Rob Reiner leaves behind. When the news fades and the court goes on out of sight, what stays is the life Rob Reiner lived and the beliefs he always talked about. He was more than a famous director. He was a storyteller who thought truth mattered even when it was hard. Through years of work, he showed a special skill to mix humor, warmth, and serious moments, often reminding people that understanding is at the heart of good stories. That belief went beyond his movies and into how he lived. Rob's work for causes showed the same ideas. He talked openly about duty to others, helping community, and caring for those who have hard times early. His support for kids' learning and health came from thinking kindness should be real, not just words. He didn't split his creative side from his public one. To him, both were ways to try to improve things, even if slowly. As a dad, Rob never acted perfect. He talked honestly about fear, regrets, and learning too late. That honesty now feels heavy. In old talks, he said he and Michelle made choices they thought were right then, only to question later. He talked about listening to wrong voices and not enough to the important ones. Then those words sounded thoughtful. Now they feel scary. In the days after the deaths, Rob's kids asked for something simple but strong: respect. They asked that their parents be remembered for the love they gave and the lives they lived, not just for how their story ended. Their words were careful, straight, and very human. They didn't blame or explain. They asked for time to grieve and for their parents' good name to stay. That ask shows the difference between public curiosity and private pain. Rob Reiner was part of the world in one way, but part of his family in another. The tragedy doesn't erase years of creating, guiding, and kindness. It doesn't take away the happiness his work gave millions or the effect on friends and causes he cared about. A life can't be summed up by its last part. What makes Rob's words seem sadly forward-looking isn't that he guessed this, but that he knew the risks of family fights. He knew how easy connections can break. He talked about the pain of loving someone you can't save alone. He admitted good plans don't always lead to good results. Those thoughts weren't big drama. They were real, honest, and very human. Looking back, his openness seems like a quiet record of someone trying to figure out what love needs when sure things are gone. That's why his story touches beyond the news. It speaks to parents, families, and anyone who's hit the edges of control. Rob Reiner's lasting mark isn't just the movie's or causes. It's the bravery to talk straight about failing, fear, and hope, even when the end wasn't written. What he leaves is his work, a public sense of right, and a reminder that truth doesn't always keep us safe from loss. But it does give meaning to how we remember. As this story keeps going, one truth stays clear. Behind every headline is a family carrying pain the public won't ever fully know. This was never just about fame, movies, or drama. It was about love, hard times, and the sad limits of control.